such a serious environment.
All right. Oh, that was one of the quickest intro. Like, it's ready to go, Tony. Tony's been nervous a little bit. He's saying how nervous he was. I don't believe it. So I'm here, episode 46. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Tony. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks
very much. It's been a while since you were here.
Thanks. Happy winter solstice.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I thought you were gonna say happy victory, Army Navy.
No. We're not gonna talk about that.
Yes, we have to talk about that.
All right.
We'll talk about that later once we talk about where you went. But I'm joined with retired Commander Tony Konecny, United States Navy. Yeah. Welcome. Our first submarine officer, not the first submariner I've ever met. So I'm hoping to talk some more conversations about that. Which is, I still think you guys are the craziest people in the military, but we'll talk more about that. You either reinforce that or totally blow it out.
All right, we'll see what we can do over the next couple hours.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll start with a quote. This is from David B. Miller. There's been different variants of this. I guess the Navy. I'm not a Navy guy. I'm trying to be part of the Navy tonight, even though we beat you a couple weeks ago. But it's a prayer that's been, when I've told, it's been modified over the years, but this one's actually for submariners. So, Lord grant our power evermore. Lord grant our power evermore, whose arm doth reach the ocean floor. Die with our men beneath the sea, traverse the depths protectively. Oh, hear us when we pray, and keep them safe from peril on the deep. David B. Miller. I'm sure you've heard that before.
I have, yes.
Oh, good. Holy cow. I was going to think like I come up with some obscure quote. No. Not that lucky, huh?
Yeah, I've heard it.
And it's a
part of Eternal Father, the Navy hymn. So yeah, it's sung every just about every kind of solemn ceremony in the Navy, and it's particularly the Naval Academy, which
we'll talk about.
Okay.
Did we talk about the Army beat Navy yet?
I think I heard some mention of that. Yeah. I was hoping that was going to pass by, but probably not.
Well, we actually had to postpone the episode from last week. I'm glad, because I was even more obnoxious last week than I would be this week. But no, Army beat Navy. We won't talk about it anymore. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll move on from that. But right. So a little bit. I'm glad to have you because, first of all, first guy I've had a long time that hasn't grown up in Ohio. So you grew up close to Pennsylvania?
I grew up in eastern Pennsylvania, a little coal mining community. The town's called Tamaqua. If anybody's ever heard of Yuengling beer, I grew up 10 miles from the Yuengling brewery.
Okay.
So was there until I turned 17, and then left that area.
Got out of there.
Yeah,
everyone knows Yuengling now. It's like
I know. It's hard to believe it was not that way when I was growing up. It was considerably a smaller beer company, and they didn't have the name recognition they do now, but certainly they've gotten it around. I think this is the fourth generation owner of the company, and he did a lot of things to turn it around, and they're doing quite well now.
Yeah, because one of my lieutenants I grew up with, his wife was from that area, and every time he went on leave, he'd bring back like a 12-pack or like a case of it. We thought it was the greatest thing. Now it's everywhere, and now nobody. I don't think I've had a Yuengling in a long time now.
No. Well, there's so many good craft beers around, and
like Zaftig.
Like Zaftig, yes.
Jim's back there somewhere. And who farted? We're giving a joke to Jim, but no. But you say you left at 17. Before we get into that, people have probably seen from the pictures. They might not notice, but Naval Academy graduate. You headed off to Naval Academy. Before that, anybody in your family in the military, or come from you break the mold, or
no? Both my parents they were World War II age. My father was machinist mate in World War II, served on two battleships, USS Washington, USS California. He served on an amphibious personnel ship, so they're the types of ships that would take the Marines close to shore, drop them off, and then pick them back up, and things were done. So he did, I think, 4 or 5 years, got out right after World War II. My mother was she was a cadet nurse corps, which was during World War II. They had a lot of need for nurses, obviously, and she came from a poor coal mining family, didn't have the money to pay for it, so there was that opportunity. She went and got her nurses training, and she would have been commissioned in the Army, but the war ended before she got her commission. But she wore the uniform and was considered kind of on active duty while she was doing it. So, and then I had plenty of aunts and uncles. That area, it's eastern Pennsylvania. A lot of pride and patriotism there, which kind of drove me toward military service. But all the people I looked up to growing up, all were World War II I'll call them heroes. I mean, they weren't recognized necessarily so, but I had an uncle that was a glider. He was in a glider infantry unit. Had another uncle that was a paratrooper. So yeah, a lot of military connection.
So, we'll talk about before you head to the Naval Academy, high school, playing any sports, or what was high school like for Tony?
High school's good. Yeah, I played football. 4 years of football. Last year we did quite well. We had a 9-1 record. I was proud of that. I wrestled for a couple of years. Didn't go as well as I had hoped to be. I wasn't a good wrestler, so I did that for 2 or 3 years. But then I competed in field and track, and threw the discus, javelin, shot put, those types of things. But never a super athlete, but I was able to hold my own. I can do okay.
So, any brothers or sisters?
No brothers, sisters. Only child. I come from quite a small family. I have one male cousin, first cousin, and 2 female first cousins, and that's about it. So, that's why I don't go back to the area so much. Not a lot of family back there, but just me and a couple cousins right now.
So, you graduated roughly 75.
1975.
Okay. I was just saying how glad it's fun to have somebody older than me on the podcast, but
yeah.
Because everybody gives me a hard time being old. I'm like, I'm not that old. I'm not as old as Tony over here, but
probably quite a bit older.
No, but so 75, graduate from high school. You have a choice. I mean, you head to the Naval Academy, like we talked about. Any other thoughts of the other service academies, or was always the Navy, or where was your mind at?
Well, I wasn't sure that I was going to get selected to the Naval Academy, so I applied to Coast Guard, West Point, and the Naval Academy. And then being from Pennsylvania, I applied to Penn State and Lehigh. And so I got accepted at West Point and Coast Guard. Those came in first, but I really wanted a Naval Academy. And but I did. What's that?
No, okay.
Well, part of the reason was my father had a big influence on me. As a child, he would sing "Anchors Away" as a lullaby to me, so kind of got ingrained early on. When I was in second grade, I met a Naval Academy midshipman that lived in the town next to us. With my father, I was probably I was in second grade, and he took me into the house, and this guy came out of the bathroom. Had his t-shirt on. He had just finished shaving, and I was so impressed with this guy. He was just he looked smart. He was professional. He was well spoken. So from then on, since second grade, I wanted to go to Naval Academy. And then in fifth grade, I read "Run Silent, Run Deep" by Edward Beach, and that's when I decided I was going to go into submarines.
So you started. That was a question I was asked later. So like fifth grade, you knew you wanted to.
It varied. It would change from time to time. I would think about, well, maybe I should go air, or maybe I should go Marines, because I really did like the Marines. I thought they were a very professional unit and something I can consider doing. But it always came back to the submarines. And so that was when I got to Naval Academy. The degree I decided to work in was called Marine Engineering, which led into nuclear engineering. So I kept on that flow path pretty much the whole time.
So that time, like that, going into becoming a submarine officer, how many people at the Naval Academy? I have to think it's a smaller number than a lot of the other, like surface guys or things like that. Or is there a lot of like, what's the breakup? Because I don't know the exact number of submarines that are out there, but it seems like there's less than the normal surface ships.
Well, it's getting less and less all the time.
Right.
I mean, we just decommissioned quite a few submarines, and we're not building them at a very quick rate right now. The way the Naval Academy graduates, about 75% go to the Navy, 25% go Marine Corps, and then in the Navy you can go surface, air, subs, supply corps. I would say about 125, 130 go into submarines out of a class of 900 and something.
So that's a good number then.
It is. Well, but there's a pretty high dropout rate.
Okay.
So they got to make sure that they have enough to go through the pipeline.
Not that they can kick out. You're like, you're not going to make it.
Well, yeah, it's a pretty rigorous academic program going through the nuclear power program.
Yeah, because for your timeline, it's close to a couple of years. Is from the time you leave the academy to getting to your first sub is pretty good length of time looking at what I've seen, normally it's not your normal 4 or 5 months.
Oh, no. Well, in my particular, because they can't fill up the whole nuclear power school all at once. So in my particular situation, I went to the Pentagon for 6 months right after Naval Academy graduation. I worked TEMDU there, waiting for the classes to open up. Then at that time was nuclear power school was in Orlando, Florida. And that 6 months of sitting in classroom, they start you off very easily. The first day you're learning 2 + 2 is 4. And then in your next couple of days, you're into advanced chemistry, mathematics, physics, metals, all kinds of stuff. So 6 months at nuclear power school. Then you go to prototype, which is an actual nuclear power plant, and you operate the plant. You get to turn valves, operate switches, see how an actual plant works. And that for me was up in upstate New York, a place called Ballston Spa. So that's another 6 months, and then 3 months in submarine school in Groton, Connecticut, where you learn the submarine aspects of the job.
Yeah, I would have been out with chemistry, mathematics,
physics, and
physics. I was like, I gotta go. It's not for me, but there's a lot going on. I mean, obviously, like what people don't know, you talk about the nuclear power plant. Like are all subs now nuclear?
All the U.S. subs are all nuclear. I think the last one was probably decommissioned maybe mid '80s, and that was kept around for research. It was the USS Dolphin, but that's been decommissioned now. So all of them nuclear power.
And what about are some of our adversaries like the Russians? Are they still catching up, or is the U.S. leading the way with the nuclear power plant?
Well, I wouldn't worry about the Russians. I'd worry about the Chinese.
Yeah.
I mean, they're turning out quite a few now. There's nobody that comes anywhere close to what American technology has. Technology and training. There's the human part of that whole equation too, and they're still so much more quiet. But the gap's closing, and it's and a lot of it. One way or another, the Chinese are getting our technology and turning around, reverse engineering it, and then applying it. So they're catching up, and it's probably not going to be very long where we're having much more difficulty. But so right now we're miles ahead.
So your time frame is you head to your first sub in 1981? Is that about right? Right. So you head out there. That's height of the Cold War.
Right.
I mean that's Russia's who we're going up against. Like what was that like at that time frame? Because you talk about, we've had a lot of people on that were post 9/11 till now. Like this is a different time frame in the military, but you're going on to the subs where I learned this from a guy I talked to. We talked about this before, but there was a lot of stuff going on between the submariners from the US and Russia doing their thing. What was that like heading into that that branch, that job, at that time in 81? Is it?
There was concern. I don't want to say scary, but it was certainly concern. I think we painted the Russians to be 10 foot tall, and they were actually maybe more like 5'5". But that, we trained and we made sure we were ready, and we got ourselves prepared. They had higher numbers of submarines and ships, but they were not nearly the quality. There was times that you just didn't know what you're going to become up against, and how to be vigilant and be ready.
So you had the first one is Pintado, USS Pintado. What kind of submarine?
It's a 637 class. They call them Sturgeon class. There are no more of those classes around. All those ships have been decommissioned now. Fast attack. This model right here is a different one in the Pintado, but that's what one would look like. It's the class. Very capable ship. They did the job that they needed to do in the Cold War. They had lots of capabilities. Everyone had a little bit different type of thing that they would be more capable of doing. The Pintado had a lot of capabilities for submarine rescue. So if a submarine went down, they could attach a submarine rescue vehicle to the top of the ship. It can go out to wherever the other ship would be sunk, and send that rescue vessel over, and then pull out the crew and bring them to safety.
So how many people on the Pintado when you got there? Sailors?
I would say probably Pintado was probably 95.
So not that many.
No.
I mean, I look at the model and I'm like, there's like 14 people in that thing. I feel like that. would fit in there, but 95. How many? Like, what's the ratio between officers and enlisted?
I'd say probably 12 officers, and then rest enlisted, 83 enlisted.
And the attack mission is actually that's. I mean, are we talking like the classic? I only know from submarine movies. We're going to talk about that later, obviously. Sure. But sure. I'm only going like this is like just full of torpedoes going to attack, ships, other submarines. What's the role of an attack submarine? 1981 U.S. Navy. What's the role?
Multi-mission. They're probably the premier mission of a fast attack submarine is to search out enemy ballistic missile submarines, because you want to take out that portion of the nuclear strategy of your adversary. So that's probably the first, and that would be the hunter killer, the attack type of thing. Right. Then there's also anti-surface warfare. You're going to be looking for their carriers or their troop ships to make sure. So there's that portion of it. But they do a lot of other things. They do intel, so they can get close to the shore and be unrecognizable, undetectable, gather the information, and use that information, pass it back to headquarters, and build our strategy around that. There's also, which is probably more so now than it was when I was in, but special forces delivery. So we can get up very close and drop off SEALs, or I dealt with the ships I was on. We had Air Force Special Forces, Army Special Forces. So you can get them close by, drop them off. They can go and do their mission, and then you can come back and you can pick them up and take them away without never knowing they're there.
I feel like that's gonna be pretty kick-ass, though. If I'm gonna think about it. That's a pretty cool mission. Like, you see it in tons of war movies, right? Everybody gets dropped off. Yeah. By the sub, it's all fun and games. They go raise hell. Submarine picks them up. It's all. I'm like, does that really happen? I guess it does. Yeah. No, I know it does. I'm kidding. All kidding. But like, so you spent 4 years on your first sub, the Pintado. Yeah. Different jobs starting off. I mean, obviously you got on there as an ensign, and then
you get out. On very. You have the basic knowledge. You understand how a nuclear power plant works. You understand submarine operations, but you're very green. You just don't know. You're going to have to be leading people in there. So you get a small division. My first division was the chemistry and radiological controls division. I had 5 people working for me, and those guys would test the water in the reactor plants, make sure it had the right specifications. They would make sure radiation wasn't getting in the wrong place, contamination wasn't spreading. So that was their primarily job. So that was the first job I had. Then I went on to being the main propulsion assistant. And then I went on to being the weapons officer as my first tour.
So main propulsion, what's that job?
So in the nuclear world, there's three different enlisted ranks that work in the plant. There's the reactor technicians, so they understand the very fine electronic portions. They deal with the operating exactly of the plant. Then there's the electronic people. So you generate electricity through steam generators or turbine generators. And then there's the mechanical machinist mates. So the machinist mates, they run the propulsion plant. So the reactor plant generates steam. Steam goes into the main engines, turns the turbine, and that's what turns the propeller. So that was my job, making sure that the main engine was doing its job. And the people were doing their job.
So it's pretty small numbers of people you're looking after, though, for most, jobs and billets, lieutenant coming out of any academy or ROTC. 5 is not many to have your first, like I think my first platoon was like 38 people or so. So it's a lot smaller people you're dealing with, obviously, the size of the ship, and opportunity to get a lot closer, I think, than to the people that are under you.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably true. I don't. And until you get into some other types of jobs, I don't think you're leading. Well, until you're the executive officer, the commanding officer ship, you're not going to be leading that many people. So smaller groups of people to start off with, and you're relying on your senior enlisted to help you figure out what it is you're supposed to be doing, and you follow their guidance, and you develop and you grow, and then you take on greater responsibility.
So stepping on board, what was the biggest thing you were worried about heading in there? Brand new ensign, heading on to attack submarine. about to lead your first sailors. What's your mindset at that time? I know what mine was, when I headed to Fort Hood, but a little bit different. 95 people in a sub that's going to go, travel the world, stay undetected, small groups of people. What were you thinking?
Yeah, I guess fear of failure, fear of not being as good of an officer as I wanted to be, and letting the guys that I was going to be leading down, letting the captain of the ship down. So just making sure that I was always paying attention to what I was doing. So I can't say that I was, because I knew there was a lot of very skilled people around me. I felt, it's a very highly trained crew. So for as far as safety went, there's one time probably one type of mission that I was probably the most concerned of, and then we did an ice run, and we could talk about that later if you want. But you're under the ice, and there's a lot of things to be worried about there. But I always felt that the ship was well maintained, it was safe, and the people there knew what they were doing, and so I can't say that I had any great concerns, other than myself, my capabilities.
Right. So it's just, so one of the things that you've done, a little bit different deployments and what we talked about on here before, or I've talked with people, is so you had a Western Pacific deployment, and then also an Arctic deployment, right, with what in your first 4 years in your first sub. What is a deployment like in an attack submarine in 1981? What's your guys' mission at that point?
Well, you're gonna leave port, and they're gonna direct you to some portion of the Pacific Ocean, and probably you're going to be intelligence gathering. You're going to be going over, seeing what the Russians are doing in the 1981 era time frame. So you get out, and I was stationed in San Diego the first tour, and we would go to probably stop and parole on the way out. If there was any problems that occurred, anything that broke shipwide between getting on board and leaving, would be fixed. We'd bring on some additional material and additional food and supplies, and then head out. Probably a lot of the operations were around eastern Russia, and we would do some in some other countries. Then you would take a station and gather that information and pass it back as well as you could. You'd be probably, deployments usually last about 6 months. So you go over the first time out, once you leave Pearl and you get to your station, probably spend maybe 4 or 5 weeks there, and then they would send you off to some port that you're going to be able to visit. So I've been to Okinawa, I've been to Thailand, Fiji, Guam. So you'll pull into some other port. Once again, bring on supplies, because submarines can't hold a lot of food, a lot of material, and then also you can't do a lot of repairs. Some ships, some of the larger ships, like an aircraft carrier, they can almost repair themselves and do a lot of things themselves. Submarines really can't. We don't have the capability of doing that. We'll pull up to either a submarine tender or pull up to a shipyard area and do some work. Have a little bit of the time ashore, maybe less than a week. Head back out, do another mission, then come back in, same thing again, and maybe you're going to go out and do a little bit of training with some allies. You're going to go out and play the enemy submarine so that they get the training. P3s will be flying, or helicopters will be flying, trying to detect. So they try to give them the opportunity to hunt down submarines. Then you would, that would probably be near the 5-month point when you've gone through all that material. And then you turn around, you're going to start heading home, and then you got to do all the work to prepare to get back, because you've got to get all the information that you've gathered and all the information that you've put together. You got to prepare your briefs and get that information, so when it gets back in the port, it could be transported to wherever it needs to go, back in. And then you're given once you get back into port, you get 2-3 weeks of relaxation time, and then it's back at it again. So
back to being out at the eastern coast of Russia. You guys are all alone. You're obviously, you're not cruising around with a carrier battle group. You're on your own doing this. So at the time, I mean, there's you're you got to know that. I mean, I think a lot of videos, I see a lot of it nowadays. You see the whole carrier group, but these attack submarines, you guys are out on your own doing this intel gathering of these missions. I mean, that's got to be a little, it makes you feel like tip of the spear, but also a little bit like, wow, we're definitely out here on our own. Like at a time, like if you're talking, I mean, I know that a lot of stuff with submarines is still classified, you can't talk about it, but you obviously aren't the only attack submarine out there. There's quite a few that are doing the same type of mission in different places, but you kind of all are on your own though, a little bit, right?
Yeah, you are. I mean, and there's certain ways that you're going to be reporting that you're okay, because if you're out there and something happens, you go down, nobody's going to know about it unless you're sending information back. So there's that concern, but it's also a lot of independence. You're once you're out there, you're in charge of your own destiny, and that's kind of a nice feeling too, that you're capable of doing what you know needs to be done. You do it right.
And so you're out there for that time frame. How often in a 6-month deployment do you guys, obviously when you're hitting the ports, but when you're out there, how much time of that is underwater, doing what a submarine does? Not, I understand you got surface going to ports, but I mean, most of the time is actually staying stealth, staying out of the way.
Yeah. It's staying underwater. I mean, the longest time I was submerged was 82 days. So that's probably typical. One of the things about submarines are we generate our own energy. So you don't have to have refueling. We make our own air, and we make our own water. So we're pretty much self-sufficient. You're dependent on food, and you're dependent on human endurance. How long can you really stand on being underwater with 95 other guys that you may or may not like? So there's those issues, but it's you can go out and you can operate pretty independently.
But you just said that so calmly. So 82 days underwater, no daylight.
Unless you're the officer of the deck or the senior officers, that you can go up and you can get it's called eyeball liberty or periscope liberty.
Right.
You get to stick one eye onto a periscope and you get to look out and you get to see maybe sunlight,
some water.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting about water. Most people, by the time you get to a submarine, you're pretty confident that you've got the mentality to go out and do that. But we took one guy out, and he really wanted to be in submarines, junior enlisted, really wanted to be in submarines. And there's a television camera hooked up to the periscope so that you could watch the television and see what's going on in the periscope. And the submarine submerges similar to what an aircraft, when it goes into the air, it's just the other direction. So it's going down. So you can kind of feel yourself taking that diving angle. And then the water starts coming up over the periscope. And this guy was watching the television, and he could hear a little bit of creaking going on. The ship's going down, and he started to panic. And he had to be sedated. We had to take him back into port because he couldn't handle the fact that the ship was going underwater.
I thought I figured that out before.
Yeah,
I think we missed it on this guy, but we got to go back. It's just, because I mean, you're not like, I mean, we've had it before. People freaked out before. I think it's like a helicopter comes in again. I'm kind of like, what the hell do we do? Just sedate him. we got to calm him down until we
you never know what it's going to be like until you get out there and actually do it. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be mental, like I like a lot of things. But this is like the craziest thing to me is when you say 82 days. That's just, I mean, in a close proximity. We're not. That's the other thing too, is the size, right? Like people, I've been in like whatever the sub is in Baltimore Inner Harbor, and I'm like, there's no way I could have lasted like an hour in that thing.
Yeah.
Let alone 6 months, and then 82 days where I couldn't like see sunlight or see the real world. That's not for everyone. I mean, all joking aside, it's really not. No. It's not for everyone.
Yeah, no, I agree. I tend to be anti-claustrophobic. I kind of like being where I can feel my surroundings, so it doesn't bother me at all. I feel very comfortable doing that type of work. So, but I was going to mention the thing about submarines. They're better now than they used to be. The guys that were World War II, I have great admiration for them because those things were really, really small, very small. Now it's a little bit better. There's more room to get around. As a matter of fact, we may talk about it later, but I was on a ballistic missile submarine and I ran a 10K on a submarine.
Holy, that's a treadmill or through the whole.
The center compartment is the missile compartment, and it's about 60 feet long,
Okay,
and 40 feet wide. 160 laps around the missile tubes. There's a deck. There's a kind of a platform, and you run around the missile tubes 160 times. And that's a 10K. So they're big. They're big ships.
were you? Was this like you just did this on your own, or
No, there was I think 5 of us participated in this, and one of the chief petty officers he came up with the idea, and he said, I think we ought to do this. We convinced the captain that it was okay because we were off patrol at this point. We don't have to worry about being very quiet. So ran around the missile tubes. The only thing you got to be really careful of the missile areas, there's a lot of pipes, a lot of valves, and you end up getting pretty beat up running into things as you're going around.
That's I never heard. That's a great. Did you guys make T-shirts for it? I mean, I feel like you should have made a T-shirt for that.
Yeah, I probably lost my T-shirt. That was many years ago.
You got to look at that. That's a great T-shirt. I ran a 10K. Like that's
underwater. Not too many people run 10Ks underwater.
What depth were you guys?
Normal depth.
So what's a normal depth for a submarine? Are you allowed to say that now?
Well,
because there's like so much. Like this is like the craziest thing. So much of the stuff is classified, right?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
I don't know if it still is, but
well,
I mean, I saw a lot of sub movies, so I'm good.
Yeah,
a lot of war sub movies, so
it's surprising when you look at the ocean. The ocean's big, and the submarines operate in a very small portion of the ocean. So I mean, it's probably 1,000 feet from surface to 1,000 feet, and you get in certain parts of the ocean, it's 3 miles deep. So 1,000 feet compared to 3 miles is nothing. So I would say we were probably 500 feet when we were running our 10K.
Yeah. So we talked about the sub. We have like you talked about World War II first, so we're gonna go there first because there's a lot of questions about greatest submarine movies. So let's talk at that point. There's World War II movies. I think that we started seeing with the submarine where they started making. So greatest World War II submarine movie.
Das Boot.
Okay. I was gonna say if he doesn't say that, I don't even know what I'm gonna do.
It's a great movie. I mean, I certainly wasn't in that type of combat environment, but I think they did a really good job of depicting what life is like. And was much worse in World War II. They didn't have the facilities that we have now, showers and water producing evaporators and those types of things. So, but yeah, Well,
I thought that movie was just great in the aspect that it really like felt so real. Like it wasn't, it was like terrifying. Like I mean, if you were those people like watch that movie, you're like, there's no fucking way if I saw that movie. I mean, when I saw that, I definitely wasn't going to Naval Academy. Definitely wasn't passing all the class, the nuclear portion of the school. But yeah, I mean, there's that movie just has that great feeling of what it was really like, and it's crazy. So he said, "What movie?" Joe's being the smart ass Das Boot. He's probably hasn't. He's a Marine, so he's probably not refined enough to watch such a movie like that. But if who hasn't seen that movie, it's about a German U-boat during World War II. So it's a great movie. If you haven't seen it, you definitely need to. Yeah. Subtitled that still, right? It's always subtitled, right? Is there a new one?
They do have it dubbed. You can get it in English, but it's not. I would recommend the subtitles because there's something about listening to the original language. But the other thing I was going to mention is Run Silent, Run Deep is also a very good movie. And because I read the book and because that had an influence on me.
So you said that. What about that book that made you decide, hey, I'm gonna go lock myself away with 95 other folks in a small tight place and cruise around for 6 months, not see the sun for 82 days? What was it about that appealed to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure anybody's ever asked me. I've said it's my favorite, but somebody in 5th grade, I probably didn't read a lot of books like that, and just was very patriotic, very romantic. The kind of life that said, yeah, I can see myself doing this. The fact there's a command structure there, and there's a mission you got accomplished. So I think a lot of aspects of what submarine life was like really appealed to me.
So we're at your first. You've done a couple deployments. Your first submarine. At any point did you, in your mind, were you like, might have made a bad decision? Anything in your mind like regretting your decision at all to become a submarine officer after that first deployment?
No, I don't think so. I mean, no, and I never thought about leaving the Navy. I was going to do a full career, and so no, I was happy with my decision.
Like I like being all tiny little spaces. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, and getting to see the world and doing what I considered at the time a very important mission.
Oh, I mean, definitely. I mean, it's a different time. I think it's a time where you always hear all the stories of what was going on. Like, so those deployments, you're out there, East Coast, eastern part of Russia, messing around. Anything you can talk about where you're actually messing with Russian submarines, or anything you're allowed to talk about now? Hopefully you can, hopefully not.
Yeah, well, I would say there was one time where we were in an area where there was an exercise going on, and the opposing ships were conducting their training, and they shot an exercise torpedo. So there's a war shot torpedo, which has the live warhead in it, and there's an exercise torpedo. And I'm pretty green junior officer, and I hear over the 1MC is the announcing system. I hear torpedo in the water, and that causes you to kind of clinch up a little bit and think, is this going to be a good thing? But then it's you after a while you learn that this happens all the time. They practice shooting torpedoes to see how you become proficient at it, and it's after a while it becomes next to nothing.
Just gets normal. You're like, no big deal.
Yeah. I mean, there's other things I prefer not to go into. Just, I mean, and my guess is probably a lot of the stuff that happened during those days you can probably find in open literature now. There's a pretty good book. It's I'll have to think about it in a second. Blind Man's Bluff. If you ever get a chance to read Blind Man's Bluff, it's a good book. But yeah, I'd prefer not to go into anything that I may or may not get myself into trouble for talking about.
Damn it, we almost had them, everybody.
Yeah.
Well, I think we'll take a pause here. We'll go over our first whiskey of the night. He brought us a new one we haven't had before, so a lot of firsts. But not a first, but Army beat Navy, by the way. Gotta get to a joke in there.
I was wondering if that was going to pass by or was going to keep coming up.
It has to be. Come on. Like, what people don't understand is like Josh was telling me how obnoxious it was. I grew up there. So but Army has been getting their ass kicked for a long time, so it's really good when you're winning. While you're on top, you gotta talk shit.
It was a 15-year run.
It was actually a long
Navy
time.
beat Army, and I had some good West Point friends, and they said, "Oh, we're never going to win." And I said, "No, it'll come around. It'll change." And the pendulum swings.
And I argue it's the greatest rivalry. Like, I think in sports. I mean, it's unpopular. Everybody in Ohio says Ohio State, Michigan, but I still feel like the Army Navy game is always just there's so much pride in each branch. It's I like it because it's the time of the year that you see everybody kind of come together. You know what I mean? It's fun to watch.
It's a lot of pageantry.
Yeah.
I mean, the military academies have some difficulty recruiting, and then once they get there, they're keeping good players. Right now, the NIL and the portal is making it difficult for keeping players on the team. If they see that they've got some talent, they're going to go somewhere else before their junior year.
I think Army just had that happen. I saw something happen where one of the Army receivers, I think, or somebody's leaving West Point into the trade portal. That's a whole other subject, the trade portal. I want to talk about.
Let's talk whiskey.
I'm not. Let's have the whiskey first, and then we'll talk about the NIL trade portal and what we think about it. But you brought us Peerless, a Peerless product. This is the Peerless Kentucky Straight Rye Whiskey, one of their single barrel selections, Maple Morning. So this is a kind of special release that the master distiller at Peerless does. This is one of the many that he's released. This one, I think, was released in early 2023. But if you don't know, Peerless is located in Louisville, Kentucky. The distillery name actually dates back to the 1880s when they first were bottling and barreling whiskey sold under E.W. Warsham and Company, based in Henderson, Kentucky. Like many other distilleries and brands, Prohibition wiped it, took away the brand. The brand went away. So did the distillery. In 2014, the Peerless brand was reborn by Corky and Carlson Taylor when they refurbished a building in downtown Louisville. If you haven't been there, it's a great place to go. Really beautiful place. And they actually obtained the original Kentucky Distilled Spirits plant number, DSP Kentucky 50, from the original Peerless distillery from the 1800s. Peerless is unique in that it uses a sweet mash rather than a sour mash, and what that basically means is that they're adding a portion of the last distillation run to the current one. This helps to prevent bacteria growth during fermentation. This helps by forging this process to claim. Peerless claims that it's more neutral pH, off distill it into like at least acidic flavor that you see in some bourbons. In 2015, they released their first rye single barrel. And like I said, this is part of their master distillers selection that is done by, I think, Caleb Kilburn is the master distiller there. And this one is 112 proof, 112.8 proof. Non-age stated, at least 2 years old. One of the critiques against Peerless Rye is how young it is. The mash bill is undisclosed, but it is rumored to be at least 51% corn. At least 51% rye. It does contain corn and malted barley, but they don't say exactly what it is. So I haven't had Peerless in a while. I haven't had the maple finish, so that'll be interesting.
I think it's nice. And I think rather smooth. I think the maple smooths it out. Thank you, sir.
Welcome. Thank you.
A little bit of spice.
No, it's better. I mean, I thought it was gonna have more of the too much sweetness, but
No,
it doesn't.
It's
that's
not
very good.
overpowering.
Yeah, that's very good. But yeah, what's cool about Peerless, if you haven't been down there, great tour. Also, they do these bottle offerings pretty regularly. Their single barrels in the gift shop. My only thing with Peerless has always been the price point is a little high. Yeah. It's a lot high, but it's really good stuff. So
yeah, I got this bottle when we were down for Peerless.
Yeah, I was kind of expecting something different with the name of it. I was thinking it was going to be like maple syrup.
Nope.
Thank goodness it's not.
Nope. Yeah, you're not a sweet.
I'm not a Finnish guy, but but anything super sweet it gets a little like hard to go with.
Yeah, I like that.
So are we talking about the NIL or are we talking about your next student assignment?
I don't need to talk too much about football. I was going to say the Army Navy games. It's great to go to. You see the cadets and midshipmen marching the field. There's a lot of the President of the United States goes there, and then there's crossing the field and all that kind of stuff. But the football programs are not the top quality in the country. They're good. They can do well, but it's not going to be as an exciting game maybe because it's mostly running. It's a running program.
But you still watch. I mean, you have every service academy. You have athletes that are going on to do other things. I mean, not maybe there are some of them aspiring to be professional athletes, but in reality, they're all aspiring to be lieutenants or ensigns or in the military. So I have a lot of respect for that game just because of obviously being a veteran, being an Army guy, but it really is fun to watch the whole entire
It usually what happens.
The whole process is great.
It can get very exciting at the end, who's going to score that last touchdown or make that last field goal, that type of thing. That's usually it's just comes down to the last couple of minutes. It gets pretty interesting.
And it's crazy how much the Air Force game doesn't matter. Like it's over the years I grew up there. The Air Force game, like the only time it matters is if you're trying to get the Commanders in Chief trophy, but normally it's like it's at alternate service academy, so it's at Air Force Academy, it's at West Point. Nobody really talks about it. It's interesting how the Army Navy game has become the premier game.
Sure.
It's I just say that to Dan, who's probably listening, that nobody cares about Air Force football, but
well, and I was at the Air Force Navy game this year, and they played in Annapolis, which I think holds maybe 25,000 people, whereas you go up to Foxborough, and I think it was sold out. It was at 80-some thousand.
Yeah,
to go to that game.
And they're moving around. I heard this is so they lost the contract for Philadelphia is gone. I think for the next 4 years it's going to be it was Foxborough, and I think it's going to be Baltimore next year.
That sounds about right. Yeah,
and then DC.
Yeah,
and then I can't remember the fourth one. But that is interesting to see it move from one place to kind of different opportunity for them. It's still on the East Coast, which people are asking. I think it'd be great to send the game out west, but there's a problem moving the corps cadets and then the midshipmen out there would be
transportation would be an issue. They did play in Pasadena one year, so it has been.
What year was that?
Probably 80, 82, 83, something like that. Maybe, yeah. It was in the early 80s. Now, there's a guy in town, last name's Brown, maybe Dan or Dave Brown. He's trying to get the game here in the Horseshoe. I don't know if that
would be phenomenal.
That would be good. Well, it would give right now, you've got to travel east. Most people are going to go, they're going to go to east. If you have it somewhere in the Midwest, you're going to have people coming from west and east, and that might be able to get a bigger crowd. But I would love to see it. Here.
Yeah, we were talking about that because someone said like just move it. Who cares about the corps and the midshipmen being there? But if you haven't been to the game, that's kind of part of the whole experience to have the whole corps, both corps
right
there for the game. So it would be a kind of a travesty to send it to like San Diego and then send 300 of each cadet class. That wouldn't be the same, I think. I mean, because there's something. My dad was actually pretty upset because we were watching at a fundraiser and he couldn't watch the march on.
Yeah,
and he was like, "That's the best part of the Army Navy game." And like when you think about it, it is pretty spectacular to see. I mean, all joking aside, but
it is impressive.
It's pretty cool to watch that and
see 4,000 people march on it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So that's all we'll talk about football then until I feel inclined to bring up
until next year when the Navy beats Army. I'll come back and we'll do another one.
When it happens, it's gonna be the worst time for me because I've been talking so much shit for so many years now. But we stuck for a long time and got beat a long time, so I can deal with it.
Sure.
So you leave there. You leave your first sub. Head to your second one, the USS Hunley.
That was a submarine repair and supply ship as a tender.
Okay.
So yeah, that was my next tour. That was in Holy Loch, Scotland.
So what's a tender do? What's the job of a tender? And
well, as I mentioned earlier, the submarines really can't do a lot of repair for themselves. They can't carry a lot of supplies. And in those days, the ballistic missiles that we had a limited range. So if we wanted to have them close to our targets, we had to have them be able to be and stay in an area close to the former Soviet Union. So we had a submarine base in Holy Loch, Scotland, one in Rota, Spain, and one in Upper Guam. And there would be a large surface ship. It's called a submarine tender, and it would have all the capabilities of doing all the repairs that they would need to do. And they would have the ability for supplying, so bring food on board, whatever equipment, whatever material you needed to do the repairs, and whatever kind of needs that the submarine would have. So I went on board Hunley. I was the radiological controls officer. So it was my job to make sure that radiation wasn't allowed to leave out of a particular area, or if or contamination wasn't allowed to spread anywhere outside of our work area.
So on the submarine tender, are all the naval officers, are they all submariners, or is it normal surface people, a combination, or how does that work?
Yeah, well, and there's submarine tenders and then there's surface tenders. So obviously the submarine guys are going to gravitate to the submarine, and they know that better. So yeah, most of them were LDOs. Are you familiar with the term LDO? Mm-hmm. Limited duty officer. There's in the Navy, there's limited duty officers and chief warrant officers. Okay. So they're kind of the more technical experts. They work their way up through the list ranks and then get their commission into the LDO program. So most of them are going to be LDOs, and I happen to be an unrestricted line officer, and that's the radiological controls officer is always an unrestricted line officer to do that particular job. So yeah, it's a big crew. It's probably 2,500, 3,000 people. Okay. The ship was tied to anchors in the middle of a loch in Scotland, and the ballistic missile submarines would come in and tie up, and we would send our crews down and fix them in coordination with the submarine crew, and bring all their supplies on board.
So what kind of repairs are they coming in? Like all kinds of different, I mean, is it like a hodgepodge of stuff, or? Yeah,
it was a lot of rotating machinery, and anything that rotates, there's friction and problems build up. So you got to do the repairs to those things. The way a nuclear plant works is you have the nuclear reactor, the nuclear fuel generates heat, and then there's a primary water system that circulates around that heating source. That carries away the heat and it goes through another device called a steam generator. So the primary water goes through these U tubes. They're shaped like a U. And there's other secondary water that comes in contact with those U tubes, which flashes the steam. Once that steam leaves that steam generator, it goes to the main engine, which is a turbine generator, or to a steam generator, electrical turbine generators, so that which generates the electricity. So those U tubes are very thin material, and what happens is if there is any amount of chlorine in the water, salt water gets in there, it will cause leaks in those tubes, and they're all packed very tightly together. So what was happening in the mid 80s is they were starting to generate some leaks in those U tubes, and you're having primary water, which is contaminated because it's in contact with the nuclear fuel that leaks out of those tubes, and you don't want that. So we would have to send in crews to specially trained crews with all the particular gear that they have to wear to try to plug up those tubes and plug up those holes. So I was there at a time when there was probably the peak of the steam generator work. So that's a lot of the work that we were doing was the steam generator inspections. There's probably about a 3-week prep up to get everybody trained up, get all the material together. It probably takes 3 weeks to do the job, and then you got to tear everything apart and get the ship back out to sea.
So when the sub comes up to the tender, does the crew stay on board, or do they you ferry them off, or how does that work?
Yeah, they can leave, and we were near a town called Dunoon, which is across the Firth of Clyde from Glasgow. So there was things you could do in that area. Dunoon's a small little town. But you could go off and you can get a bed and breakfast, or you could spend a night out in town if you wanted. But most of the crew would stay on board the ship and then just do the work there. And then if they were given liberty, they can go off on liberty from there.
Because I'm thinking as soon as I had a chance to get off the sub, this is like they're staying there like, oh, we're good. We don't want to go. We don't want to go on land. I feel like you'd want to get off, especially with some of the repairs. I mean, there's not a lot of space, I assume. So I guess you're just doing your job. And
yeah, it's surprising how quickly things go when you're out there all that time. And you think, oh, I'm going to be on this thing for 6 months, and you get out there, you have to get so much sleep. You have to eat. You have to train. You have to stand your watch. So all that stuff takes up time, and time goes by rather quickly. Before, at least for me, and I'm sure other submariners probably argue that, but at least for me, before I knew it, I was coming back off a deployment.
So let's go back to the submarine time. Like, what is it really like living on the sub? Like everyday life. I mean, sleeping. You were an officer, so you said about 12 officers on board. Mm-hmm. So separate billets for sleeping for officers?
The CO and the XO had separate quarters. And then the department heads, there's 3 department heads. There's a weapons officer, an engineer, and an operations navigator. It's one job. They might be in a 2-man room, but then the junior officers, they're either 3 men or I was in some 6-man rooms. So
how big is the room?
About the size of a phone booth. if they have phone booths anymore. Small. I mean, and the bunk is a little bit bigger than coffin size. You got a place to sleep. I mean, if I would put from my elbow to my fist, that's how much space I have from the bunk to what was over my overhead. But they're small. They would have 2 desks that would kind of fold up. The desk would fold into the wall and have 2 chairs to do work. But yeah, not very big. Maybe 6 by 8 or something like that, and it'd fit 3 people in there.
So what about the enlisted folks? Same size or even worse?
Well, yeah, I'm not. Well, the chief petty officers, they had nice quarters. They had something similar to what the junior officers would have. A lot of the enlisted, depending upon what type of if we were carrying special forces on board, or special guests for doing whatever type of training or work we were doing, they would do what was called hot racking. You're familiar with hot racking? somebody would have the rack. It would wake that guy up. He would go on to watch, and somebody would jump into his rack before it would get cold. So that's where the term hot racking came from. So you really didn't have your own bed. You shared the bed. Now I'm guessing they maybe had your own sheets, and they can kind of change the sheets, but they would be having to share a bed. Not at the same time. Not at the same time. We didn't do that in submarines.
Just the surface ships they do that now.
Or
the Marine Corps. Sorry, Joe.
But sometimes that they'd be sleeping in between torpedoes. They would be in the torpedo room, and if all the bunks were taken up, they would put them in the torpedo room. And they would set up a bunk in between two war-shot torpedoes.
So how was the food?
Everybody always talks about how good the food is. It was good. It was not any better than any surface ship I was on. What I was able to observe is that there was more money given to the submarine force because of some of the hardships you have to endure all the time underwater and at sea. So they were able to afford maybe more variety, more things. I mean, we would occasionally have steak and lobster, not all that often, but it was good. I mean, it was certainly nutritious. There was an ice cream machine, and that was always very popular to make sure you had some ice cream. But yeah, you had to watch your weight because the way on submarines, it's broken into 6-hour shifts. So every watch you stand is going to be 6 hours long. So they serve a meal in between each shift break. So you could end up eating 4 meals a day if you weren't careful. And sometimes you do because you're so stressed, and that's a time where you can relax. So if you eat 4 meals a day, high calorie, high carbohydrate type of food, you can put some weight on. There's always a joke that there's an indicator when the hatch, when it's open, you get a green circle indicating it's open. When it's shut, there's a red bar. And some of the guys, when they would leave, they would give them a hard time about giving a shut indication because they were closing the hatch. They were still filling it so much.
So obviously, a ship that size, any type of way to exercise the smaller ships, like what's on board for the crew to exercise?
Well, on the ballistic missile submarines, there's.
I know about that, but I'm talking about
so they on the ballistic missile submarines, they had probably 2 rowing machines. They had kind of a universal gym with some weights, but not very big. They had a treadmill and stationary bike. On a fast attack, maybe 1 stationary bike. So that's it.
Yeah, so that's it, huh?
Yeah.
Is anybody using it, or is it?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, there's just like every other group of people. Some people are physically minded and want to keep their shape. There's those that don't, and they would not use it.
I'm hitting that ice cream machine 4 times a day.
Yeah.
So that's it. So like that's crazy to think that. Because I mean, you talk about you're not. I mean, it's not the tight quarters, a lot of food. Not a way. Like, what do you do? What's the crew doing for an outlet? And that they're on 6 off. They're on 6, and then what are you doing on a sub to?
You're very busy. So like I said, you got to sleep, and sometimes you're able to get 5-6 hours of sleep. Sometimes you're not. You have a watch, and then they list her in 3 shift rotations. So they get 6 on, 18 off. Officers are usually in 4-section rotation. So you got to sleep. You got to eat. You stand 6 hours a watch. If you're a division officer or you're a leading petty officer, you've got administrative duties to take care of. You got to keep the record books proper. You got to. There's training. We run a lot of drills. We're constantly running drills, fire drills, reactor scrams, flooding. You got to make sure the ship's constantly ready. So, as I said, it goes by quickly because you're constantly doing something. And then, so for entertainment, they carry movies. Back when I was in a submarine, long time ago, they had the old reel-to-reel movie. So you would pull out the reels of movies, put them on, run them. The messman specialist would cook up some popcorn, so we'd sit around and watch some movies. Now I think things are very different. I think they have the digital things on the digital that they can show movies. People could watch movies in their bunk where we weren't able to do those types of things. So yeah, it's guys will play cards if there's a break, and then usually in between a drill set. So you'll brief a drill, you'll run a drill, and then you debrief a drill. So during those period of time when the drill team is doing all that, the prepping and the debriefing, there's time to sit down and do. So guys will play cards or chess or checkers or something like that.
So any people sneaking alcohol, any illegal stuff on the submarine? So I feel like these guys can't be perfect, right? And I was in the military, everyone's trying to break the rules. I feel like someone is sneaking some alcohol on the sub.
I probably did. I'm sure somebody did, and there was medicinal alcohol aboard in case that was needed. That the corpsman, we would have a corpsman that he would have in his locker that we would only use it for medicinal purposes.
This sounds like this is maybe I was meant to be on a submarine. No, I'm kidding.
And I've never seen them use it, but they do have some. But yeah, it's very high security because you got to go on and the topside watchers are going to inspect bags. So it can be done because if you know the guy that's topside, I guess you could probably sneak something by. But I did never experience it. Now surface ships, I saw some situations where they were actually taking Kool-Aid and somehow fermenting it and making alcohol out of it. So yeah, it certainly happens. I was going to mention the other thing about the ways things have changed. When we used to go out on patrol, our families were given what are called family grams, and it was 50 blanks, and you could write a word on each blank. So you could give 50-word letter to be sent to your sailor. So the family member, my wife would take it and write down whatever she wanted to say, take it into the base, provide it to the headquarters. They would transmit that. It would come in through radio, and then that would be given to the commanding officer, and he would in the XO, and then they would take a look at it and make sure that it wasn't going to cause any hardship or any problem, and then would provide it. So maybe 2 or 3 times you would get a 50-word message from your wife or spouse or family or whatever. Then we were not able to communicate out. I haven't been on ships recently, but I understand now that they have email and they can do communications. So makes things a little bit better on the family situation.
So let's talk about that for real now. So 50-word in messages, right? No, nothing out. What was that like, honestly? I mean, because that you're talking about some isolation stuff. Like I make jokes about, you go to military school, you've done some stuff. Like I'm, a little older generation of military before phones happened, but cell phones, not regular phones. But what was that like? What was the isolation like? Because that has to weigh on people's minds. I mean, all these sailors have lives, they have families. What is that like being that much in the blind?
Well, it certainly depends on your situation. If your family situation is good, strong marriage, comfortable with your kids' behavior, you get by. There's certainly going to be situations where there's issues at home, that infidelity, and you got to wonder when you get out there and you're going to be away for 6 months, what's going to happen. So it could be stressful for them. I never experienced any issues. I had a very comfortable situation. Never. My wife was in the Navy. We met in Scotland on a submarine tender, so she understood Navy life
and submariners, right?
Yeah. She wasn't a submarine.
No, I know, but she understood.
But she understood, with the kind of people we were and kind of craziness. But yeah, it's stressful. There was a situation where we were on patrol, and there was the earthquake in San Francisco. Probably would have been like late 80s, late 1980s.
During the World Series, right?
Yeah. Yes. And one of matter of fact, the chief quartermaster, when I was the navigator, he was from San Francisco, and his family was affected, and he got word, and it was hard on him because he didn't know when he got back what the situation was going to be. He knew his family was not going to have a house to live in, so it can get tough. But yeah, I think we all got through it.
So you guys did say that you got the messages in. If you thought it wasn't good for the sailor, you would sometimes not share these messages?
There was probably not many situations like that, but yeah, I mean, the spouse and the headquarters doesn't know that person's mentality at the time. He may have had, he just failed an exam, or he didn't get selected for the next promotion or whatever, and he's really under stress, and he gets something in from his wife that says, things aren't going well, life's bad here, something along those lines is going to make his life even worse. So that type of thing might have been controlled, or at least given to him in a situation where he can deal with it. So, but I think most cases, most families know what it's like to be deployed, and they're not going to send really bad information. But they also wanted to make sure there wasn't anything that would be violating confidence and information that would be.
Yeah, I'm not criticizing because I think it's an important thing. I mean, you're in a different. I can't think of any situation that's it's pretty unique is what you folks were doing. That there's no you want to be able to make sure that you're looking after, like you said, the mental welfare of that.
Because nobody's going to know what it's like except for the person that's right there.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people that seem pretty harsh. Like you should just give them the message. But then again, you're like, yeah, okay. We don't want to have to sedate him like we did that one guy and
turn around. Yeah.
Put a life vest on him and let somebody grab him later on.
Well, we didn't put a life vest on, but we did.
I'm joking.
Right, I understand. But we had some injuries.
Shoot him up out of the torpedo.
We had some injuries on board. We would have to surface and then get close enough to shore. A helicopter would come out and then pick the person up and take them out. But it was more serious than a family situation.
So all serious at that time though, say like a death in the family. You're out on deployment. They just got to. I mean, is there any way to get them off the ship, off the sub, or do they really? Is it kind of a different thing? Because a lot of military branches that happens. If you're at the National Training Center, they pull you out. If you're not real deal stuff, like what's during that deployment? Are you kind of? Is there any way to get somebody off the sub for something like that, or do they just have to deal with that at the time?
Well, I think it's going to depend on the situation.
Right.
I mean, if it's spouse or children. Right. Obviously, they're going to make a more concerted effort. If it's your grandfather or grandmother or something like that, maybe not. It would depend on the mission. If the mission is very critical at that point, and it's really important not to pull that ship off, they may not. But it's pretty rare. If there's something that the command structure thinks is worthy of pulling the ship in, they'll do it. They'll get them out. They'll figure a way of getting them out.
Exactly. I still don't know how you did that, dude. I'm actually in awe. I mean, I look at the model, like at the times I've been a sub, I just think it's crazy.
Yeah. But it's a good life, and I really enjoy doing it. And like I said, I felt the mission was important, and
I still think it is. I mean, I think they're still doing some great stuff out there that you look what's going on. So like we're gonna fast forward now. We're getting before we get too deep and stuff, because we'll get to the next submarine you were going on, right? We'll go to the next generation, not like, let's go like 1990s, 2000 best submarine movie.
Probably Hunt for Red October.
God, him and I are like, Tony and I are like.
Yeah, I mean, that was a good one. And Clancy wrote some good stuff. He put together a good plot. I thought they picked good actors in there. I mean, just like anything else, it's Hollywood. It's not everything that's in that movie is the way submarines operate, or not the capabilities they have. But very, very good, very interesting, very entertaining movie.
Because I threw Crimson Tide in there.
Crimson Tide was very good.
That's my second. That'd be that second time frame.
Yeah.
But Hunt for Red October was great. So the movie. Let's talk about movie, because there's a lot of people that have never set. A lot of people have never set foot in the submarine. A lot of people. What that movie Hunt for Red October? What is like the big when you're watching it? All people watching movies, service members that watch it, you're like, that's not, we're like, that's not how this works. Like, what in Hunt for Red October was total bullshit?
Well, probably I may be confusing movies. I haven't seen them for quite a while, but there's I think where they're egressing from a particular port and they're going through this very tight cavern. And they're making turns at specific times. That just doesn't happen. I mean, the navigation is good. It's very good. You could probably predict within feet of where you are, but you're not going to do that type of maneuvering. Just you would need visual observation of where you are. You can't just depend on the navigating systems to tell you to to get through those. So that kind of navigation. The use of active sonar is almost non-existent anymore. They just don't use active sonar. So there's all the one pings and all that kind of stuff. They do it if it's necessary, but what you want to be is it's the silent service. You want to be quiet. You want to always be listening rather than transmitting.
So when you're watching a submarine movie, are you that critical of it, or are you are you like we are? Because it's really like there's so many less people have done that, right? So compared to other people, but are you really like, oh, we don't do that, that's bullshit? Like, because I watch it and I'm like, this looks like bullshit, because the guys are like, I just watched, I can't even think what it was with Gerard Butler, worst submarine movie ever. But they're literally, like you said before, they're like making all these tight turns. They're landing on the they're going to the bottom of the ocean and just like sitting there, and I'm just kind of like, is this really happening? I think not.
No.
You're like, no.
And you're asking me if I'm critical. I mean, it's certainly inside my mind, I'm thinking about all the things that are inaccurate, but I try to give it some leeway, realizing it's entertainment. I mean, if it's nobody's going to want to go on board a ship and watch what we do every day. It's just not. it's not that entertaining. I mean, it's important, but it's not that entertaining.
The one dude on the station, like,
right, or the guy changing the grease out of the steam engines or something. So I mean,
the guy eating 12 ice cream cones a day.
You've got to put some Hollywood into it to make it that people want to watch it, particularly people that are not familiar with the submarine force.
Yeah, but I think some of the movies that makes it look, it makes it look a little hokey. I'm kind of like, or it makes you look like there's no other way I'm doing that. Like, Das Boat. What about U-571? Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah, where they went on board for the Enigma. Is that the one?
Yeah. When they end up taking the German sub, I thought that was a good one too.
Well, and that actually happened. I mean, somebody did get onto a ship, a German U-boat, and was able to get Enigma off. But yeah, it's been a while since I've seen it. So, but I thought it was realistic in some regards and good acting. So yeah, it was good. There's another one, if you haven't seen it, the Hunter Killer, which once again there's some stuff that doesn't really necessarily work that way, but it's another good movie.
I haven't seen that one.
Yeah,
I'll check.
I was just looking on one of the streaming networks, and I saw it, and I thought, well, let's try it. I wasn't expecting much because it was for free, but it turned out to be okay.
I'll have to add that to the playlist.
Sure.
So you leave the sub tender, head to your advanced course. That's or
yeah. Let me just mention one other thing about being a sub tender. So part of my job was making sure contamination wasn't in the place it wasn't supposed to be. While I was there, Chernobyl occurred, and Chernobyl's Ukraine, probably 3,000 miles away, and so we were just going about our business, and we got word from a Swedish station that there was some type of nuclear accident somewhere. They didn't know where at the time. So we started getting ready, and it eventually worked its way because of the jet stream coming from Ukraine up north. And we had, on the surface of our ship, we had 10,000 times the amount of radiation contamination that's acceptable. Spread across the deck of our ship because of a nuclear accident in Ukraine.
Oh, that's crazy.
We had to take precaution not to take contamination into the area where we do the nuclear work. So we were normally you want to make sure everything is in the spaces is that's where the contamination is maintained. We were doing the opposite. We were trying to make sure we were contaminating those areas, because then we couldn't prove where that contamination came from. So that was, and there was a lot of people. I mean, particularly a lot of I'm sure the Scots were very concerned too, but a lot of Americans that had their families over there were constantly trying to figure out, how serious was this, what big of a problem it was. So that made my life a little uncomfortable for that period of time.
Jeez, I can imagine. Is that the biggest concern on the sub though? The nuclear component of it, is that really the number one?
It's certainly the one that gets the most attention, because it's the one that could go very badly, very quickly, if not taken care of. But the U.S. submarine, the U.S. nuclear power program is an extraordinarily program. And then I'm familiar with Hyman Rickover, Admiral Rickover. He put together a program, a super program that thought about almost every detail, trained his people well. He handpicked all the people who were going into the program initially. I always felt very comfortable working on it, working within feet of a nuclear reactor, all the components. But it's certainly, because if it loses the coolant, primary coolant that I talked about earlier, it can't cool that material. That material will melt all right down and maybe go through the bottom of the ship, and then you got some real problems.
Yeah, we got a problem there.
Yeah, Houston, we got a problem.
So after Scotland, you head to your advanced course, your submarine advanced course, and then you actually win an award there, the David L. Lloyd Award for Excellence in Leadership. Mm-hmm. So is that one person wins it, or
one person per class?
Awesome.
So yeah, it was. I guess I did well enough for them to recognize that I should get that, and it's a 6-month course where you go to school just about every time you change duty station. So there's a basic school for going to the division officer tour, and you go to advanced course before going to department head. And so just go into more detail, learn more things that you really need to know for your next assignment. And you're going to always go back to New London, Connecticut for some school if you're in the submarine community.
So you met your wife in Scotland then?
Right.
Did she follow you to the advanced course, or when did you guys?
Yeah, we met probably in '86. I left in '87. We stayed in contact. She got out in '88, and we got married. And then I was at postgraduate school out in Monterey when we got married. And then my next assignment was going to the advanced course for 6 months, and then on to the next ship. So yeah, she was there. Normally schools up there are only maybe 2-3 months. This one was a 6 month, so you're allowed to do a permanent change of duty station.
So after advanced course, you head to the next submarine, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Henry M. Jackson.
Right.
So that's a missile.
Ballistic missile submarine.
Okay.
Yeah, Trident submarine.
Still around?
They're all the Tridents, and as a matter of fact, the first one was named the Ohio, so they call them the Ohio class submarines. Okay. So the Ohio was 726, 725, and I was on the Henry M. Jackson was 730. So it is still around. There were 18 of them built, and there was I think the intent was 9 in the Pacific, 9 in the Atlantic. They've since taken 4 of those off and made them SSGN. So they've taken off the ballistic missiles, put on a lot of Tomahawks, and they also have compartments where they can deliver SEALs. So they're basically a big armada type of ship. They can launch a lot of missiles, and they can deploy a lot of SEALs. So Henry M. Jackson's still around. It's out in Bangor, Washington.
But that just at the time was just ballistic nuclear missiles. Is that what it was? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. 24 missile tubes, 24 missiles, and they had multiple warheads in each missile. Now that ship's as long as the Washington Monument is high. So it's 500 some feet long. It's a big ship. It draws 18,000 tons. I think the Sturgeon class maybe 6,000 tons. So it's a big ship.
So is it normal for a submarine officer to go from the attack to the missile? Is it, or do you have some people that stay in the same type of submarine their whole career? I think
if you want to stay in Navy and you want to progress up the chain, I think it's a good idea to get an idea of what both do. I mean, and it depends on your family situation. The fast attack is a lot of time at sea. The schedule is very erratic. You just don't know what's going on. You might go for 6 months, you come back into your home port, be there for 2 weeks, and you go out for 3 weeks, and then come back in and you're in for a couple of days. So it's very erratic. The ballistic missile submarines are a very set schedule. The ship is out for 2.5 months. It comes back in, and there's 2 crews on that type of ship. You change crews. It comes back in. The combined crews work on the ship. They do all the repairs, all the fixes, and because the one crew knows about it, and the other crew's got the energy. and then that new crew takes over.
And the other crew's like, we just want out this thing.
Well, and there's some that did not do that. And then the other crew gets 3 weeks of rest and relaxation, and they start a training cycle. Then the other crew takes the ship back out to sea, so they're out for 2.5 months. So one crew's in, one crew's out.
So the attack submarines are different, same crew.
Right. I think there's some attacks that are deployed, that they're permanently stationed, maybe like in Guam. I think they may have 2 crews just because, and I don't know if they get the families are there. And it's been
a couple years.
A couple of years since I've been around submarines. So some of the information I have may or may not be good, but most of the fast attacks are one crew.
Interesting. Yeah, because you said there's something that's put in your bio that I was going to ask you that, but you hit it. There was when you were in Bangor, you had that 16 crews and eight submarines. I thought that was
right.
An Army guy. The math was. I kind of figured that. I'd never heard that you guys actually swapped crews before, which is pretty interesting. So you head to the ballistic submarine. A little bit better living conditions, or the same
on a ship.
Yeah.
More space. I mean, there's more exercise equipment. There's you can run a 10K if you want to. So bigger. I would say the enlisted probably have it better. Their bunks are in between the missile tubes, which is fine. I mean, they're big tubes. They're well insulated, but so I think they have more space on the ballistic missile submarines. But basically, I mean, there's a lot of parts of the ship you don't go, and so in that regard, it's not a lot different.
So, what about the mission, attack mission, or the missile? The ballistic missile. What did you enjoy more?
Well, the fast attack is much more enjoyable. I mean, you're doing something different. You're going into different places. If you're very much a family person and you've got to have a set schedule that you want to be around the family routinely, the ballistic missile is better. So because you know when you're going to be at sea, you know we're going to be back home in port. And the fast attacks you're not, but it's a much more interesting life. There's a lot more you're going to be involved with, doing different things. The fast attack guys make fun of the ballistic missile guys, say that their motto is hide with pride, because the ballistic missiles guys, they don't want to be detected. They want to, their whole purpose in life is to stay undetected, have those missiles ready to go. So they're hiding. They're trying to be as quiet and unobserved. The fast attacks are out making a name for themselves.
Yeah, just raising havoc and
yeah.
So on you say being quiet. So what's that involve on a ship, on a submarine, when you're trying to stay quiet? What are you meaning by that exactly?
Well, once you start on patrol, they'll say the ship's going to go into a quiet condition. If you're going to listen to music, it better be on headphones or earphones. You take extra precautions to make sure you're not going to be starting some maintenance program that's going to cause a lot of banging. You do a lot more checking. Almost all the equipment is sound isolated, so it's kind of these rubber grommets that make sure that vibration doesn't transmit to the hull of the ship. So you're doing a lot of checks on those things. If you can even do, if necessary, you turn off ventilation fans, you reduce some of the air conditioning to try to make it as quiet as possible. Just being aware that you're not going to get guys running on treadmills. You're not going to have guys doing 10Ks. That's done outside of a patrol time frame when you're transiting, probably. So you're just aware, and you're doing everything you can. And the sonar guys are sitting in the sonar room, and they're listening. And if they hear something that's not normal, they'll tell the officer of the deck, and he'll send somebody to find out why is there noise.
What is that noise right there?
Yeah. Well, it's pretty amazing what you can hear.
So is that pretty accurate with the movies where they are sitting there listening to other submarines or finding things? Or could you hear that? If you guys are running around, could you hear that?
Oh, yeah.
The other sonar folks pick that up.
You're not going to hear some guy singing,
or like dropping a wrench.
Dropping a wrench, you will probably hear. Yeah, that's probably something. But I think the Hunt for October, the CEO wanted to get all the Russians singing.
Okay.
And they said, "Hey, listen, I hear Russians singing out there." I'm not sure that you would hear that. Now, if you move loud enough, they may, but I don't think that's the case. And the other thing about the movie, it's not you have the sonar will pick up a bearing. There's noise on a bearing. You can't say what it's doing. You can't say what depth it's at. You can't say which direction it's going. You might be able to tell how fast it's going if it's going perpendicular to you, but it's a science. You know there's noise out there. It's a science and an art to figure out where that other ship is, what it's doing, how fast it's going, which direction, what depth it is. It's a lot of work. You don't just look at a computer screen and it's automatically that kind of stuff doesn't happen.
Yeah, because in the movies, it's like they hear the noise all of a sudden, like, oh, it's a Russian, sub and not bearing. Like, so that's all.
No, there are certain ships will make certain noises, and depending upon what type of propeller it has, depending on the propulsion system it has, this one has a particular propeller. If you would hear that, you would know it was a U.S. Submarine. There are certain frequencies that come out of equipment, and you can say that it might be a particular type of ship, but it can't go down to a whole number. You couldn't say it was number 684, that type of thing.
You make a lot of money if you could do that.
Yeah, then it'd be the world's most powerful navy.
There we go. I think it already is the world's most powerful navy, right?
Yeah. There's nobody right now. I mean, the Chinese are catching up very quickly, and what's going to happen is they're going to do us in with quantity. Right now, we got the quality, but they're building they're building ships that I think I don't in terms of submarines. I think we're doing 1.2 per year, and I think they're doing something like 4 or 5 per year. So it's not going to be long before they overcome us, and then they're smart people. They will figure out how to do things. So we better keep on our toes. You asked about the ballistic missile submarines. If all those were still in service, so there are 18 of the Trident or Ohio class still available. Those are coming to near their end of life. The new submarine class is called the Columbia, and they're planning on building. I don't think they've started yet, but they're going to be taking those, and then they'll phase the Ohio class out.
So that new class will be ballistic, also like the Tomahawk and like multifunctional.
No, they'll be pure. They'll probably keep those SSGNs around, but they'll be purely ballistic missile.
So when you rank like a submarine, when you're in there, like the people that like harass each other, like the most. So are the attack people giving everybody shit, or is like how does that work in the hierarchy of?
Well, just
because everything has that in the military, they always making fun of everybody else. You know what I mean, so
sure. Well, just like the airplane guys, I'm guessing that the jet pilots think they're the best.
Right.
They let everybody else know, but the other guys provide very important functions, and so same thing with the submarine guys. I'm sure the fast attack guys feel that they're the jet pilot guys, and the ballistic missiles are doing a job. It's probably the most important job in the national strategic system, but how they go about doing it is not as romantic, I guess.
Yeah, because I think like people don't know what to talk about is you have these subs that are placed, anywhere in the world that can pretty much have nuclear capabilities to do what needs to be done. That's a pretty important job. I mean, pretty significant strategic threat to have. I can see that.
Yeah.
That's also the attack thing. I don't know that. It seems a little too small. I mean, a little bit bigger. I'm more of the bigger. I'm not a small guy, so
yeah.
The bigger the better for me. But so you leave that. You served a couple department heads there. You served as navigator and then operations officer.
Same job.
So
there's 3 to 4 department heads on that type of ship. There's a weapons officer, the supply officer, navigator operations is one job, and then the engineering.
So what was it like being a department head? A little bit different responsibility, I assume. More sailors under your.
Yeah, you're work with people. You have 3 or 4 divisions now that you're responsible for, so more responsibility. And then there's always collateral duties. There's a program that makes sure that the people that are responsible for nuclear weapons are sane to start with, and then they stay sane. So one of your collateral duties may be to run that program and look at records, monitor people, make sure things are going right. There's all kind of collateral things that happen on the ship you got to do. So yeah, more you're learning more. You're more confident. You're working your way through, and keep looking down the road for the next job too.
So department at 03, 04.
You start out as an 03.
Okay.
I because I went to postgraduate school, and I kind of fell behind a little bit in the promotion, so I got to that department head job as a lieutenant commander. But normally I'll show up as a lieutenant 03 and then get promoted to lieutenant commander 04.
Okay. So you leave that job, you head to another sub, you go back to the attacks, right? I'm trying to figure out the number. So SSBN.
SS is United States Service Ship, and then B is for ballistic.
Okay.
And then it's an SS ballistic nuclear.
Okay.
Nuclear, and it stands for the nuclear power plant. And then an SS is just the nuclear.
Okay.
They don't have the ballistic missiles.
So 92. The next sub you go on is actually the
Kabbalah, which is a ship here.
Okay, and that's where you're the executive officer.
Right.
That's where you get into like hunt for red. I mean, you get into what is it?
Crimson Tide.
Crimson Tide.
Yeah.
Denzel Washington over here.
Right.
No.
Right. This you're second in command. When you go through the executive officer class, they say your primary job is to be there in the event that something happens to the commanding officer, because you're the next guy in line. You're gonna take over. So that's you got to keep that in the back of your mind all the time. But you're the commanding officer is the division guy. He's looking for the big picture of the way things should be going with the ship. And then it's the XO's job to make it all happen, make it occupied, run the ship daily. There's a document called the plan of the day. What's going to happen on that particular day? You're going to train, you're going to drill, you're going to take a day off, you're going to clean the ship. You're always cleaning the ship, making sure. There's a saying that says a clean ship's a happy ship. So you're constantly cleaning things, making sure that they're in good shape. So the executive officer is responsible for the execution of things that goes on, and to make sure the training's happening in time. So then to kind of take a little pressure off the commanding officer, so that he can kind of keep an eye on the bigger picture.
So what is the commander? What's he focus on the sub there? Just while you're doing all kind of running the plan, is he the person coming up with the plan, or?
Yeah, well, he's taking an overall look at where the strengths are, where the weaknesses are, and if the crew happens to be very proficient in this, then okay, we'll take advantage of that. If there's weaknesses, we're gonna do more. We can't fight. We're not good at fighting fire, so he's gonna say we're gonna XO. We need to put in extra firefighting drills in this, or we've got to train on spread of contamination more, because I'm a little concerned about this. So both these CO and X are going to be doing that. It's not the XOs with blinders on, but he should be the one overall making sure the ship's progressing. It's getting ready for inspections. It's getting ready for deployments. The people are happy and performing well. And if there's any problems, make sure it's pointed out. So there's really three people in that triangle of command and control. Is the CO, obviously the head, the XO, and then the chief of the boat. He's the senior enlisted guy, and they call him the Cobb, chief of the boat. And he's very seasoned submarine enlisted guy, knows the ropes, and then it's his job to make sure that the enlisted understand what's going on, are briefed, or trained, or disciplined, and making sure that feeding that information back up to the CO if he sees any problem. The XO probably leans a little bit more towards the officer, the wardroom, making sure that he's keeping an eye on the officers. But they all work together and communicate as much as possible.
So the chief of the boat, like how many years has that person generally been in the Navy?
I would say 18 to 22 usually. Okay. And then some of them, it's a great job. I mean, a lot of those guys will go back and do 2 tours, because it's it's your ship, and there's a lot of pride that those guys carry. And that probably a lot of them will move on to other, maybe some more senior jobs in the squadrons and the groups in the larger Navy. But I would say probably 18 to 22. So
commander of a sub 2-year assignment or shorter? Or?
Yeah. Well, Rick over controlled almost all the operations, what would happen in nuclear plants. And he didn't want anybody to have less than, I think, a 3 to 3.5 year tour. Okay. He wanted to make sure that people got in there, got confident, got comfortable, and there wasn't this constant changing. There was some, and I know some of the other, like the air community and the surface ships are doing now, where the XO comes in, he does XO for 18 months, and then he fleets up to be CO. I don't know if the submarine community is doing that. I don't think so, because the Naval Reactors is the organization that Rickover started. I think they want to have control over people that are operating those reactor power plants. So I don't know if they've changed over to that or not, but I think it's a good idea. You get there, you learn the ship, and then rather than somebody coming in new, you have some, you know the people, you know what their strengths and weaknesses are.
So chief of the boat, how long do they stay on?
Usually 3 years.
Okay.
Usually 3. I mean, depending upon manning and those types of things, they may extend them for longer, but 3 years is probably typical.
So that's their boat, though, the chief of the boat. Huh?
Yeah, they think so. They do. and you'll see a lot of COs. They'll say, they're right. I mean, they're the guys that make a lot of things happen. And if you don't have a good chief of the boat, it's hard to run a good ship. I mean, you could overcome any weakness, but it's very difficult. It goes up exponentially if you don't have those 3 as strong actors.
All right, you ready for the second? Another pour? You ready?
Yeah.
We're gonna move into my pour. We changed it up a little bit. I didn't realize how high proof your Peerless was gonna be. I thought you were gonna come in a little bit lower. But I went lower today. I went with Michter's. You had a lot of Michter's before?
I did.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
I know your friend Dan Bachman's a Michter guy, and so I've had some of his.
I forgot he was. Yeah, we didn't go that high. We've got some stuff out here. I think we'll have to try that when we're done. A little bit higher proof. But I went with Michter's. We haven't had that in a while, but we featured the bourbon. But tonight we're going to feature the rye, their normal. I'm sorry, their unblended American whiskey. So Michter's, actually claims to be the oldest whiskey producer in the United States. It was founded in 1753 by the Schenck brothers out in Pennsylvania, Johann and Michael. While the distillery is out in Pennsylvania, it went through a bunch of different names, Bomberger's, Pinot, before it finally landed on the name Michter's. Michter's is now owned by Chatham Imports Incorporated, and the company built a new distillery on Whiskey Row in Louisville. That's kind of why I picked this one. It's not that far down the road from Peerless. Actually, it's really close. I think a block or so away. Pretty close.
I was interested to find out Peerless where it was. It was kind of on the waterfront, though.
Yeah, it's like down off the right towards the west. Exactly.
It's an interesting part of town.
Yeah, Michter's is on that same side of the road, but just right on the main street there. This is the Michter's US 1 Unblended American Whiskey, which was introduced in 2013 and is aged in. It's a little bit different. It's not considered a bourbon because it's actually aged in bourbon-soaked barrels. Which is we've never talked about that before. And the rumor is that these are unlike other bourbons that are aged in virgin bourbons, is actually aged in bourbon soaked barrels. They say it comes out of the Michter's 10-year bourbon. And they also use the word unblended in this, which also annotates that there's no neutral grain spirits that are used in the making of this whiskey. Unblended whiskey is part of the standard US 1 Michter's family, which is the bourbon, which we featured before, the rye, and they also have an original sour mash. This is 83.4 proof, so a lot lower proof. Non-age stated like yours, very similar. It's supposedly about 2 years old. They say it's a little bit older. I wasn't able to find anything on that, but it is also an undisclosed mash bill. I love when they try to keep everything secret. Kind of keeping that whole thing of like the submariners. Yeah. You brought a secret mash bill. I'm giving you a secret mash bill.
Before I start a bourbon company.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be great. But this is actually rumored to be 79% corn, 11% rye, and 10% malted barley. So, have you had this one before?
No, I have not.
Yeah, it's a different taste. I haven't had it in a while.
Hard to get around the microphone here.
Don't worry, you're doing pretty well. You've only hit like 3 or 4 times. We've had it's usually the Marines that hit it a lot. Like the Marines are, I think we have the record is like 30, 40.
So,
Chris, woot. No.
So do you get a bang when the headphones?
I do. Yeah,
Okay.
you do. It's like a sonar.
All right.
I detect. No, it's over. Yeah, I definitely can hear you.
I'll try to be careful.
No worries. But cheers.
Cheers.
You're not jonesing to try that?
I want the other one, the red writing.
It is corny. It has the corn.
Yeah.
You can taste the high corn, but it's a good one.
Very smooth.
It's definitely.
Nice sipping.
It's one of those ones that it does remind me of like really really soft notes. It's easy to drink it. Not my favorite because I like a little bit of the burn, like the barrel proof you brought in. I like that. Warm you up, make you sweat a little bit while you're drinking it.
Yeah.
So
it depends on the mood and which one will accomplish. We can drink a lot and then drink the
yeah. I try not to drink a lot anymore. It's bad for me. It's bad for everybody. So
Everything good
it's better in moderation. Yes,
moderation.
exactly.
Sure.
I'm not always the best at that, but it's okay.
Well, if you have something to celebrate, like a Navy win in a football game, then you gotta drink a few extra.
I did celebrate a little bit of Army Navy.
Did you? All right.
I gotta say. Why not? You weren't supposed to bring that up. We're done talking about that now.
Well, I figure if I could be on the offense, it's better than being on the defense.
But so we talked a lot about submarines. Anything else you want to say about submarines?
There was something, and I'm gonna have to think about it. But go ahead, and if I do, you mind if I?
Yeah, anytime when it comes to you, that's fine. But
Okay.
one of the things that your next job I thought was interesting. You sent a lot of pictures of it. You actually were part of this. This is kind of cool. And I have a funny story about this. But you were part of the Intermediate Nuclear Forces, the INF treaty inspections, right? As a mission commander, you conducted 15 strategic arms start and inspections. So, like, you were going over to Russia, kind of the whole nuclear sharing. It's an interesting time for people that they don't remember that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like opening the doors. Is that the right way to what was going on?
Oh, yeah. Well, just to make a minor correction, there's two different treaties. There was the INF treaty, the Intermediate Nuclear Forces, that was signed, and that's for kind of the medium-range ballistic missiles that kind of sit on the peripheries of a border, and they're much easier inspection to do. Then there was the STAR treaty, which is the strategic. They're the big bombs. And that was the one that I was there for. I was able to perform both type of inspections, but I got there at the baseline of the START treaty. So yeah, it was a program that was allowed us to go to former Soviet Union countries. And at the time there were four. There was Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and Belarus. Those are countries were able to maintain nuclear weapons after the falling apart of the Soviet Union. So we would go to those countries and do the inspections. They would also send inspectors, and we would act as escorts to take them to our facilities to allow them to do the portions of the inspection that they were allowed to do.
So a lot of the people in the job, submarine officers, or mix of everybody?
There was only two of us.
Okay.
Well, and part of that reason is there's a lot more land-based ICBMs than the others. So there's land ICBMs, then there's Air Force has bombers, and then the probably the most important, at least in my opinion, my humble opinion, the strategic ballistic missile submarines. So, but there was. Did
you guys get that? His opinion.
there was only.
That's a good argument, though, right? I mean, I would agree with that argument. It's a very strategic threat or offense that defense, whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's definitely a threat. Deterrent. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Those ships can get out there and they basically become black holes. It's very, very difficult to find a Trident submarine when it's out on patrol, and it will stay there and just wait for orders from the president or the National Command Authority to launch. And it's a good system. Whereas ICBMs, everybody knows where the ICBMs are, right. So they're already targeted. They could hopefully, if and hopefully it never happens, but if it does happen, you get those off before they get hit. Also, bombers, they're susceptible because radar can get them. So the submarines are the most undetectable, and probably the strongest arm of the triangle. So that got started, I think, 95, 96 is when we started the baseline. I was making trips into former Soviet Union countries.
So did you get to meet any former Soviet Union submariners that were out doing the same thing you were? Get to chat it up a little bit?
Well, when we started baseline, the way baseline worked is that sorry about that. I brought a map of all the places that we were able to go. So what we did when baseline started, every facility that was on the map got inspected first once, and that formed the baseline of what was to go forward. So I got to do all of me and the other Navy guy that was on there on the staff. We did all of the submarine bases, the storage facilities, the launch pads. Then there was Air Force guys that did all the bombers, and there were mostly the Army guys that went and did the ICBMs, even though they're controlled by the Air Force. But the Army guys, they had a program called FAIL. They were foreign affairs officers, so they were Russian trained. They knew they were able to speak Russian. I could not speak Russian. I had interpreters going with me. So we went over and we did all the Navy bases to start off with, and then as follow-on inspections, when you would do those, then I went there. I was wide open. We didn't want to tip our hand when we were going in for inspection where we were going to be going. If they saw a Navy guy coming, they expected we were going to a Navy base. Well, I got to do some road mobile launchers. I got to do some air bases. I got to do some ICBM facilities.
So, do you enjoy that job?
I had two. Well, I had a lot of great jobs, but I would say two of the more favorite was that one because we got to go into former Soviet Union countries and meet those 10 feet tall people, and we found out that they were not. And there's certainly those that want to return to the old Stalin days. One of my trips, I was going to be in country for about 2 weeks. And we decided to take out football with us because we knew we were going to have a lot of downtime. So we went out and started throwing a football around in a schoolyard. And this was in Siberia. And this big Russian man with a big fur hat comes marching up to me and gets to my face. And he's speaking Russian, and he's pointing his finger at me. He said, "If Joseph Stalin was still alive, you guys wouldn't be here." So there was that group of people who were still existed. And I'm sure they still exist. But we went to places where they never saw anybody outside their communities, let alone seeing Americans. And we got to meet some really nice people. Some of the women that would cook the meals when we would come into their facilities they're super nice. And you got to realize that they're people too. They're genuine. They probably have their fears. They have their concerns about what the United States does and is not doing. So. But it was a nice interaction. But you asked if I met another naval officer, and I was on escort duty, and I had a Russian submarine guy, and we were in Virginia Beach, and we were walking up and down the beach, and he turns to me and he says, "So this is what it looks like from the shore." Telling me that he was at some point sitting off the shore, looking through his periscope and checking us out too.
Yeah, at that time that's one of the things that one of my friends had shared with me about being in the submarine community at that time is that it was kind of scary to know what was really out there, and they were out there just like we were out there as well. So that's what did you say back to him? Did you say anything?
I just kind of smiled and we walked on, but no, nothing in particular, nothing that I can remember anyway. I might have had something witty at the time.
That's great. So you leave that job. You head back after that job. You head back here to beautiful state of Ohio.
Right.
You get to take over recruiting.
Right.
In Ohio.
Yep.
That's a big change from being in the submarine community to recruiting.
Yeah. Well, what happened is.
Do you see me say that, Russell? Like recruiting, everybody, recruiting gets a bad rap.
It does, but it's an extraordinarily important.
Yeah, it is
important job. I was in the Navy during military, but for me, particularly Navy, during the Reagan buildup. And we were building ships and building airplanes and bringing people into the military in large numbers. So we had quite a few. We had probably at that time we had over 100 submarines, 100 fast attack submarines, probably 40 some ballistic missile submarines. Then the Soviet Union fell apart. And then it was decided that, well, now we've got a peace dividend, and we don't need all what we have now. We could probably turn this into something else. So a lot of the submarines went away. So we went from over 100, I think we're like 46 fast attacks now. So that's greater than 50%. Ballistic missile submarines from 40 down to 18. So that's more than 50%. but we still had a lot of people still in the pipeline. So I did screen for command. I went through the commanding officer school, but the ships were just not there. Now, there was probably plenty of more highly qualified people that did get the jobs. I didn't get command, but one of the offerings was to have command of a recruiting district. So that was my command tours when coming back here, and I look forward to it. I realized it was going to be difficult. I can be a salesman, but it's not my strength probably. But it was a very enjoyable job. I got to see there were some enlisted guys that just did marvelous things out there, explaining the value of joining the military to high school students and people that should probably consider the military. They do a great job at doing that, bringing people. And there's going to be those that either oversell or undersell things and maybe don't kind of give you the full story. We try to make sure that doesn't happen too often, but I'm sure it does. But yeah, and it's a tough job. And because I just a statistic I want to share with you. This was off an ABC article, but 77% of Americans 18 to 32 years old are ineligible for military service, either because of obesity, drug use, either prescription or illegal, criminal convictions, or don't have a high school. So that's 77%. That means 23% can join, but of that 23%, only 9% have the propensity to want to join. So we're struggling recruiting wise. It's a very important job, because if we don't have the people man the ships, it doesn't matter how many ships we have to have good people doing it. But it's a very tough job finding good quality people to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine. We've made fun of recruiters before. We've had them on before, but it is a tough job. And I think even if you look at military recruiters, civilian recruiters, you have to undersell or oversell sometimes to get people in.
Generate the interest.
You got to get it in there. It is what it is. But yeah, it is kind of a scary time when you think about the numbers I think the numbers are all time low right now, also in all the branches on recruiting. And I get it. I mean, the times have changed a little bit. We've come off two wars, two 20-year wars that have really fucked up a lot of us. There's a lot of effects that we're all still dealing with. We've talked about on this before, and why we brought up Ports of the Patriots, a lot of moral injury, a lot of PTSD, a lot of stuff that I think a lot of generations are seeing. The after effects of it, and it's a tough time. I mean, I can imagine being a recruiter now would be. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of parents that served, and they're saying to their kids, "No, don't do that. Don't go," because some people spent how many tours in Iraq and Afghanistan.
I mean, people ask. I have 3 boys. I'm glad that the cycle is broke. Right. We can get super deep into that, but I'm really glad. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think there's always gonna be the people that, like you said before, you talked about, your father have an influence on you, your mom, her time in the military.
My community too. All the people I looked up to were all World War II veterans here.
Yeah, that's always gonna penetrate. I think everybody. It's gonna find those same people, because we're all out there, right? But yeah, the time there is, I think now, more of like some people that will definitely say like, oh, why would you join the military? And the only thing I would tell people about the military, I think it's still one of the places where you have the opportunity. It's 4 years. Like, you can do anything in 4 years, right? Especially now that we're not at war, it's a little bit safer to go. But leaving out of the military 4 years, having a job that you're proficient at. Also, the benefits, the educational benefits coming out of the military now are second to none, really. So there's a lot. I think anybody can do 4 years. I think it's better than going out and trying college for 4 years and being $125,000 in debt. Right. And realizing I want to do that. So there definitely is a shift. I mean, I never pushed the military, but I wouldn't also, if one of them said they want to do that, I'd be okay with it. But yeah,
I tend, and I don't want to force the military, but I tend to push it. I think it's too easy to not have to pay something back to society. I think military should be one of the options. I mean, if it's whether it's Peace Corps or AmeriCorps or something community service that you're helping the greater society. And I think the military is probably the most important. And once again, my humble opinion, but I tend to talk it up as much as I can. I'm a chairman of the recruiting district advisory council for our local recruiters here. So wherever we can open doors to get them with points of contact to help out the recruiting effort, I still think it's important, and I try to talk whenever I can.
Yeah, it is super important. I just actually saw, I think early in the week or last week, that I think West Point had put out something like a tweet that basically said, come to the military academy, you're guaranteed a job. And they actually laid it out specifically what it is. You're going to have a degree, you're going to make $70,000, you're going to have a career. And it was funny to watch in the chat how many people just went at, oh yeah, but you're forgetting this, you're forgetting that. Yeah, you're forgetting the congressional, you're forgetting this. But there's a lot of folks that meet that criteria that decide to go to Ohio State, they decide to go to BYU, they go to Penn State. You've got to continue to do what you can to reach that person nowadays, and it is a big deal. What I was most shocked about was there's no way I made $70,000 when I was a second lieutenant. I'm like, holy shit! Yeah. I mean, I did not make that much money. But it's a sell you have to do. You have to figure out what to get, because there are people there's tons of smart men and women that don't choose the military, don't look at it as a viable option. And any of the service academies, make fun of them as much as you want. You leave out of there, you do your commitment. It's a pretty good gig. I mean, and if you qualify, if you can, the parent that says no, you're you're not really helping your child out, in my opinion. I mean,
certainly talk about the hazards and talk about the down. There's ups and downs to everything. Talk about the downsides and make sure that, because you don't want to go to Naval Academy expecting that life's going to be great and it's easy and anybody can do it. Anybody can do it, but you want to go into with the attitude that there's downside and there's challenges and there's hazards. And once you're in the military, have those discussions. But I always discourage when people dissuade their kids from but I do understand it, and I understand those people that did lots of tours.
There's definitely there's definitely people that I had my dad on to a lot of things. As I wish my dad had said some things to me about what the military really meant, what those things. I wish that, but in the reality, that was my story, right? That was my racket. It wasn't to change what I did. I was gonna still do it anyways. I think that the key is just to be honest with you. And one of the things I always say is the honesty about, I don't want to discourage it, but there's a lot of benefits. If you sit down and weigh a lot of the options, it is a great thing. It's not for everyone, but it should be for more people in my mind. It's definitely an interesting time. But I am glad my boys aren't going. That's one less thing I have to worry about. One less thing my wife has to worry about. I'm happy for that, at least. But I am super proud to see some of my classmates. Their kids are, Marines and serving, and kids that I saw that were young, 5-year-olds that are now lieutenants in the Army. I'm like, holy shit, this is crazy. It's cool to watch. But let's jump forward a little bit. You want to talk anything about going to the Netherlands? That job, or
I would just add that I said Jasmine was my favorite, one of my favorite jobs.
Is this your favorite job?
The on-site inspection agency to inspect nuclear weapons was one of them. Then the second one was NATO, because I had 3 different jobs. I moved through the staff while I was over there, but there was 26 foreign countries as part of NATO, European countries. And we were at a second level staff job there, and so I could go out to dinner one night in the Polish guy's house. The next night I can go out to a Norwegian guy. So I could be traveling throughout Europe and staying in one place, and then just to see the mentality of how NATO works and the interaction and living in a foreign country. And it's nice to visit a country, but if you're tied to a bus, or you're tied to taxis or whatever. I had a car, so I was able to drive to Italy. I was able to drive to Paris, and do a lot of things that I want to do. So it wasn't necessarily the most important job I ever did, but it was certainly one of the most fun.
I think you took one of my questions. Like, what was your favorite place to be non-military wise? It sounds like
Hawaii.
really
Non-military wise? Yeah. I don't.
It
I mean,
sounded like you liked the Netherlands. That would sound like a good spot.
you know, getting back to why to join the military. I got selected to go. My parents wrote a check for $300 to send me off to the Naval Academy. As soon as I got there and I stayed 2 weeks, they sent the $300 back, and then my tuition and education was paid for. I got a job. I got trained in something I like to do. I got to travel the world and see a lot. So, but people a lot of times will ask me what was my favorite spot, and it's always tough to nail down. I mean, I love Hawaii. I did 2 tours in Hawaii. I would go back there if it wasn't so remote, it wasn't so expensive, it wasn't get so crowded. But I really,
it is expensive as hell if you've never been to Hawaii.
Well, I was there in 1980, and
Yeah.
I probably could have bought a nice piece of property. It would be worth quite a bit more right now. But there's and meeting the people that I've met. I've met presidents. I've met chairmen of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I always tell people that there's a lot of people who sit on their sofas and play video games. I got to actually do a video game. I got to go into a submarine trainer and shoot simulated torpedoes and go out and do it. So I got to do pretty fun and exciting things. A lot of people simulate doing. So I just can't say enough about a military career.
That's great. So you transition out 2003 time frame.
Right.
Then you work for First Command, which if you've in the military, you know about First Command.
Right.
You become a financial planner for them. What drove you that route? For people that aren't listening, the First Command is pretty big at all the military installations, right?
Yeah.
Pretty
Yes. Yeah. I would say there's
like
a concentration.
Yeah, they're like your first people that ever hit you up really quick, young, about how much you should be investing. Vince, I should have listened to you more years ago that I fought, but yeah, they're definitely a lot of military bases to give you that at that time when you really need all joking aside, my financial plan, I didn't listen to 70% of the things he told me to do.
You did or did not?
I did not.
Did not. Yeah.
I did not. And I wish I had. So now I try to pass that on to my kids now, but I definitely, his name was Vince and I fought him. I mean, we became pretty good friends, but I was always like, I don't want to put that much money in there. That's crazy.
Well, back at that time, it seemed like a lot of money, but if you would have done that at that time, that would have seemed like a small amount of money to what you may or may not have had now, depending upon how things went. But, so I started very early. The supply officer on my ship came in and said, "What do you do with your money?" I said, "I'm not doing anything." He said, "Here, go see this guy." This guy said, "Here, do this." And being a good nuke submarine guy, I signed the paper, did it. I was getting nuke bonuses and money was going into, IRAs and that type of thing. So I got started off very early. And so I had a good relationship with First Command. When I retired from the Navy, I came here and there was no First Command representative, but a lot of clients. So I thought, well, okay, I'll do this because I didn't want to get into government work. There's a lot of things I just didn't want to get into. I always had some interest in finance. And so that's why I got started. Not just like every other organization, there's good people that are looking out for you, and there's people that are maybe looking out for themselves a little bit more than they should be. So I had a good run with First Command. I have some issues with them, but I listened to what they told me, and it paid off well later on.
Listen to some things. I wish I'd listened to more a little bit, but that's all right.
Yeah. Well, we all do that.
My First Command rep once, I've been blowing her off for like 4 months now. So I keep changing the appointment because I don't want to go in there and get lectured about
what you're not doing.
What I should have done. I'm like,
yeah.
It is what but it is great. It is. But we always tell people we've had somebody on before that did the financial part about it. Like in real estate and the military, a lot of things I look back on, all joking aside, is save your money when you can. Also, the one thing I regret is not buying more property, like buying property when I was, and I've seen so many people that I was so afraid to do that are just think if you bought a place in a couple of places in Hawaii, you'd be like,
yeah,
and somebody did it.
Yeah.
Dang it. I'm kind of joking, but it is what it is. So did that till 2015. What have you been doing now for 8 years? You totally retired or what's?
I'm not getting a pay. Well, I'm getting the military retirement pension paycheck, but yeah, I'm not working for a living, so I do a lot of volunteer work. I'm on the board of trustees at the Naval Academy Alumni Association, so I go back twice a year to Annapolis, and we try to make things better for the alumni. There's 69,000 alumni across the world, and we want to make sure that we have a first-class alumni system for them to help them out either with finding jobs or keeping connected or whatever it is. So I'm on that. As I mentioned before, I'm on the chairman of the Recruiting District Advisory Council. I'm on a board for a Veterans Memorial in Worthington. I found this excellent craft brewery in town, and I have some connections with, and I spent some.
Is that Who Farted?
No, no, it starts with a Z. So I spent some time.
It's that. I think it's a joke. Come on, everybody.
So I spent some time there, and working with Jim and the crew over at Softig. And I'm rather environmentally minded. We have a couple community parks nearby, and I volunteer and go in. For the last 12 years, I've been cleaning out invasive species, pulling out honeysuckle and grapevines were not supposed to be, and garlic mustard, and trying to keep the park looking nice. The cities can't do it all. And so I think if more people would go pick up trash around their house or keep the sidewalks clean or keep the parks clean, I think we'd have a much nicer place to live.
So what drives you? So like you did hit them all. The president of the Columbus chapter, U.S. Naval Academy Association, trustee of the United States Naval Academy Association, vice president of the Greater Columbus Council of the U.S. Navy League, life member of the U.S. Submarine Veterans. Like what keeps you drawn toward your service? Going and picking up trash and going after invasive species. What's driving you to keep doing that?
I don't want to get bored. I'm as you said, I'm old. I don't want to get older quickly. And I feel like I have some things to offer. I've missed some accomplishments throughout my life. I wish I would have done a little better in certain areas. So I don't want to. I like golf, but I don't want to golf all the time. I want to do something that's helping others. I feel very strongly about the military. So that and veterans, there's a lot of people have sacrificed a lot, and I want to. If I maybe sacrificed a little, but not as much as some. And I want to, if there's help needed, I think you have a wonderful program, and you're concerned about suicide issues. There's homeless issues. There's mental health issues. So I want to stay involved in those things, and I'm moderately capable, and I have some things that I can offer.
So one of the things one of the questions has been leaning towards is we talked about the mission at Pours of Patriots. What about your struggles? Do you have any PTS or depression struggles during your time in the military, or since you retired, or anything like that?
No, I've never have. Fortunately, I feel blessed that I've not have to deal with that, because I look at it and I just can't imagine what pain people must go through to think about taking their life. That's just got to be unbearable. But no, for me personally, and I don't know of any in my immediate family. So,
So as your military thing, what do you think? What things have you done through your life that keep you, your time in the military? The isolation, the stress. What were some of the things that you kept your mind busy to not go down that dark road that some veterans do, or to struggle with depression? Is it physical activity, reading, like what anything that you can?
I'm a
throw
Christian.
Out to anybody?
I'm a Christian. I have a pretty strong faith. I firmly believe that my faith in God has helped me keep my head straight and give me a clear path of what to do. I think I've had I had a great upbringing. I think parental involvement is so important. I had two loving parents that took good care of me. I had great concern. There was never emotional abuse. There was never violence in my life. I went off to a school that prepared me to deal with a lot of situations. So it's having a faith, having a belief in something, and having that preparation to face all life. I have an interesting motivational video I'll send you that Naval Academy put out, and it talks about that life's tough. Life is hard. It'll knock you down, but you just got to get back up and kind of keep moving forward. And realize it's tough for some people. That not everybody has the maybe the strength to do that. But if you can keep that in mind, you can get back up and keep moving. That's what you need to do.
Great wisdom, great words. A lot of it does, one of the things I've learned in my journey lately is it does help to have, like you said, a good, strong family structure that starts early. Not everybody, has that safe place, but I'm glad you did. I'm glad that you came out of this pretty unscathed. One of the most relaxed people we've had here. Like your demeanor is unbelievable. I respect it so much. It's calming. It's awesome. And one of the things I do have to say, thank you for your service. You said you said earlier that a lot of people have done more than you have done. I think you've done a lot more than a lot of people have. So thank you for your service. One of the things I'm trying to do on this program is not to, take tickers or whatever who's done more. You raised your right hand. You served your country. That's, thank you. Your service is no greater or no less than anybody else's. So thank you for what you've done. And thank you for being our first submariner. I thought we were going to get a little bit more like secret stuff, but Tony's like, nope, nope, we're not talking about that.
It is the silent service.
But yeah, we have to do something. So the final question about submarines: most scared you've ever been on the sub? You got to tell a good story here. What is the most scared you've been on? All the times you've been.
I related to one where we were in an area where there was an exercise going on. I heard torpedo in the water. That certainly caused me concern. It didn't last very long. I would say the other time it was their ice operation. The Russians, they probably still do, but at the time they were sending a lot of their ballistic missile submarines underneath the ice. So we had to go up and train if we had to find them and then what to do with them once we found them if there was a conflict were to arise. But out in the open ocean, the ship is built very well. It's very sound. It's inspected numerous times. It's got a system. It's called the emergency blow system. If you have flooding or you have a problem, you throw two levers. They're called the chicken switches, which kind of is a bad name. If you don't want to be a chicken if you have an emergency. So you throw these levers, and that pushes compressed air into the ballast tanks, and the ship will rise very rapidly to the surface. And once you're on the surface, you have a better chance of fixing whatever the problem is. Under the ice varies anywhere from 4 feet to 150 feet. You have a problem under the ice, and it's a long distance to get from where you are to where there's clear water. If there's a problem, you're probably not going to make it. So every night going to sleep, or every time I was on watch, I was the officer of the deck. I was thinking, I got to be extra vigilant, a little extra vigilant now, because I don't want anything to go wrong. So I would say, other than minor personal faults or failures or issues with inspections, that's not scary. So those are the two issues that probably caused me the most concern.
The torpedo in the water would make everybody a little Oh no. Well, Tony, again, thank you for coming back. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your calming vibes. I love it. Yeah. Thank you for bringing your favorite whiskey. Although you said it wasn't your favorite though.
It's
one of your favorites.
It's one of my favorites. It's nice. But I'm the kind of guy that I want to try one of everyone. So I kind of go from and my mood changes and my taste changes depending upon the day. So
it's always one of the things I always ask people. I always ask what your favorite whiskey is or bourbon. It kind of depends on what mood you're in, depends on who you're hanging out with, what their favorites are, things like that. So before we close, anything you want to add?
No, just thank you for doing this. This is nice. It's been enjoyable to be here to be able to talk about my story. It's nice to have that opportunity, and thank you for what you're doing for suicide prevention.
I appreciate
that.
It's a great
effort.
And it's totally my privilege to be able to facilitate telling your story. I've been looking forward to this. Hopefully we can get you to have one more drink and maybe tell us something off camera that's a little bit, cooler. So
sure.
Last question before we close it. All-time favorite movie. We talked about submarine movie.
I think Patton is my all-time favorite movie.
Even over submarine movies, though.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my father took me to see it, and it was just another one of those points.
Patton is a great movie too.
Yeah. But like you said, just I do like the Top Gun movies, and I enjoyed the Maverick that just came out. Matter of fact, when I was last in Annapolis, I met the guy that was doing the flying. He's the guy that Tom Cruise played. That did all the flying and all the stunts, and also that was pretty interesting.
I did have one more question. Worst submarine movie?
Ooh, what's the one with Kelsey Grammer? That's Operation Petticoat.
That's a kind
it's good, but it's not. It's a comedy. It's not a submarine
that's true,
movie. I don't know. Every submarine movie.
I'm giving you a hard time.
Sure.
But thanks. So again, Tony, thank you for coming on. Thank you for allowing us to share your story. Now we're going to transition into honoring a veteran who took his life. Tonight we're going to honor U.S. Marine Sergeant Tristan M. Klinger, 28 years old. Tristan took his life on December 28, 2015, while he was stationed at Joint Base McGuire-Dix, Lakehurst, in New Jersey. Tristan was born October 23rd, 1987 in Marion, Ohio, and graduated from Fern Creek High School in Louisville in 2006. Prior to enlisting in the Marines, Tristan attended the University of Louisville Art Institute. After enlisting in the Marine Corps, he became a CH-53E helicopter mechanic. Tristan had many hobbies. He was always reading, learning, and trying new things. He loved art, music, dancing, and cooking. Tristan especially loved making whatever he could with his own hands and loved being outdoors, hiking, camping, and fishing. Tristan was a passionate and fiercely dedicated to his family, and was most proud of his family he had made for himself. He was a tremendous husband and father, and put all of himself into being so for his wife and 3 children. Tristan is survived by his parents, Daniel and Darlene, his wife, Rachel, his children, Alice, Elise, and Barrett, sisters Tiana, Karen, and Kirsten, grandparents Ronald, Joanne, and Mary, his in-laws Donald and Kathy, and other family members. And if you're a veteran listening, or you know any veteran, you definitely need to contact the Veterans Crisis Hotline at 988 or 1-800-273-8255 and press 1. Or you can actually text now at 838-255, or you can actually chat online at veteranscrisisline.net/chat. And like we've always said before on Ports with Patriots, if that doesn't work for you, that is confidential, but you absolutely need to reach out to somebody you can talk to. This is going to be our last show for 2023. So thanks for coming on. End of season 2. Somebody had said we call it that. So we're going to take a little bit of a break. I think we'll be back January 11th. Don't quote me on that, but we're going to take a little bit of a break. But I do want to thank you again, Tony, for coming in. Special thanks to a couple of my brothers who are in the audience tonight. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for supporting it. And sorry, Jim, for all the bad Zaptic jokes over there. Okay.
It's all good.
I love you. And we'll see you all.
Hey, I do have one more thing.
Sure, get in there.
Since you talked about the Columbus Chapter Naval Academy Alumni Association, I do have a challenge coin that I'd like to give to you.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
I've got the school crest, the Naval Academy crest on one side, and Ohio with Columbus identified on the other side. So you're welcome to come to any of our meetings at any time.
Do they take the Army-Navy jokes well?
When we win, yeah.
But thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Everyone have a Merry Christmas, have a Happy New Year, and we'll see you in 2024.